All right, this is inspired by Kanine. Okay, so today we're going to cover Kanine, what I said, and we're going to try and copy the deep, Reese, hypersaw bass sound that's going on in there. Now, I need to remind you about my Patreon. If you sign up in the next 2 weeks, you will get a bonus sample pack and preset pack that isn't going to be available anywhere else. It's just for you guys that sign up on my Patreon. Okay, let's get on with the video. Okay, so today I'm going to mix it up, and I'm not going to play the original and then mine. I'm going to just mute and unmute mine and the original, and you can decide which one is the original and which one is my recreation. So here we go. So I think that goes to show I got pretty close this time around, and let's have a look at what's going on. So first up, I made some drums. Well, actually, I dragged in some drums from my upcoming sample pack, and so the drums sound like this. So pretty standard skippy, liquid drums. Go buy my sample pack if you want drums like that. The hardest thing for me to get was this Kalimba, because it's doing kind of a weird repeating pattern, and then it's been truncated so that it's a longer but shorter pattern. It's weird. Anyway, here it is. So you can see the edits and you can see the loop points. So I had to kind of like figure it out by constructing the tiny loop and then just mixing and matching it until I got it about right. Let's move on to the main bass. I did add a sidechain and a saturator. Now they're not making a big difference to the sound, but I'll switch them off so we're just hearing the Serum patch. Here we go. And you see I've got two patches. They're actually the same bass, just one of them's got some changes so that I can more closely match the modulation in the original song. What I would normally do here is actually just map a macro and then move the macro around and get some variations, and then I'd choose the best variations and drop them into my song. But because I'm trying to match someone else's song, I made a separate copy to work on it a little more precisely. So in Serum, here's the starting point of the patch. Yeah, it's a saw wave. I added a squared sine sub with direct out. So that comes out regardless of the other effects, which might actually interfere with the sub region. We don't use oscillator B, we do use the filter, and the filter is on a multi-filter, so it's low pass and band pass 12. And I just dialed in these frequencies by hand and by kind of listening to the effect. This frequency knob controls the pitch of the band pass, and this cutoff knob controls the pitch of the low pass. So you can hear that you can get a variety of tones out of that. So I think I had it around here. I just set it by ear later. In the effects tab, the first and most important effect is hyper, and I'll play it now. And you can hear it's instantly stereo, and it sounds like it's got some detuning, but it's not wobbling like a pure unison would be. I'll show you the difference. If we go over to oscillators and we bump the unison up, and here the sound goes all wobbly, and I noticed that the original definitely doesn't wobble. It's a very pure, consistent tone, so I was looking for another way to get that same unison width, but without the wobble, without the phasing effect. So using hyper is great for that. I turned the unison here back down to 1, and then I dialed in hyper just by ear. So it sounds pretty straightforward and consistent and strong, but it still sounds wide and rich. Okay, then we have a bit of distortion. So not a lot going on. The drive's a little bit over halfway. We then use our good friend multiband compressor. So the multiband compressor just pulls everything up and makes it all a lot more present, especially that width from hyper and a little bit of the distortion. The difference with and without those is this. So it's a big difference that you get from hyper and from the distortion. Now then we've got another low pass filter to take off all of that extra content. It's really important. We've flattened out the frequency spectrum of our sound using the multiband compressor, and then we're pulling off the top end, which is quite different than if we'd left the highs missing and then tried to boost them. It wouldn't have worked. So we've now got a much more consistently loud sound across the frequency spectrum, and now we're using this second low pass to control how high up the frequency spectrum it goes. All right, then we've got a reverb. The original sound has plenty of reverb, plenty of spatial stuff going on in there. If anything, I haven't put enough on. You can't really hear that. And then we've got an EQ just to give it even more bottom end. Because I noticed the original was still just 1% thicker, I just gave it a little push in the bottom end. That's our basic sound. Now you can see I've got one macro knob down here. It's assigned to 4 different things, which is the filter cutoff and the filter drive on the effects filter, and the 2 cutoffs on the dual filter. And so if I sweep through this, yeah, quite a variation in tone. I really like it. And if I was writing a song from scratch, I would just use that and I would modulate the hell out of that and then take little snippets of that and then dump them in my song where I wanted these modulated notes to be. But while I was trying to replicate the exact modulation of the original song, I couldn't quite get there using just that knob. So I set up an LFO. So we'll have a look at the second Serum here. And everything's essentially the same except for this LFO shape, which is assigned to the same parameters but in different amounts. And the drive is turned up on the distortion a little bit, and there's a delay. And so this sound by itself sounds like this. It's a little bit hollowed out and a little bit more distorted. And when it plays the actual notes, it comes pretty close to the original. I could be a little more extreme with the LFO, but it's close enough for me. So that is our 2 basses inspired by Kanine. Okay, that was inspired by Kanine. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit like. And remember, you can join my Discord, you can join my Patreon, all that silly stuff in the description. Thanks for watching.